Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture on the properties panel. So the properties panel can be found here on the right hand side by clicking on this little tool icon which says properties. In order to use the properties, you have to be selected on a specific activity. For example, if I drag in the message box, we can drag it into our design panel, just like that. You can then see if we select it on our properties panel, it comes up with a whole bunch of different attributes and fields where you can enter values of those attributes and define all these properties. So if I drag in a different activity, for example, this one, you'll see that it has different properties because different activities work differently. And so they require different inputs and outputs. So it can be quite overwhelming at first about how to use all these different properties because all the activities are different. But a nice little tip is if you hover over the text of these different properties, it'll tell you exactly what those properties are about. And if you right click on the activity itself and click on help, it'll open up the UiPath documentation where it'll give you the details on how to use those properties for that activity. So here we have the message box documentation. Just going to wait for this to load. There you go. Make sure you select it on Studio and not Studio X. Scroll down, and then you can see here, it gives us the descriptions of all the different properties, as well as some extra useful notes. So anytime you're confused on how to use a specific activity and their properties, simply right click on it and click help, or you can simply hover over the properties like that. So let's now change some properties of this message box just to demonstrate how this works. First, here you can enter the title, and here you can enter the text. Note that not all fields are required, and it would be nice if UiPath put maybe a little asterisk over there or over there just to tell us which fields are required. What will happen is it'll tell us that there's an error, and it'll tell us the value for the required activity argument text is not supplied. You'd actually have to go and hover over the error in order to see which fields are required. So it would be a nice feature addition. If you are ever interested in suggesting to UiPath certain feature additions, you can come here and you can click send feedback, and you can submit an idea. You can select it for whichever tool. So Studio, how important is this? We could say it's nice to have. The subject is, let's say, required fields, like that. And the description, we can say add an asterisk after property names in property panel. There you go. Can add attachments, and you can click send. There you go. So now we've just sent them a suggestion on how to improve their product. So if we come and type in text here, for example, I am a robot, you first need to click away, just like I did there. And now you'll see the error message is now gone. And that's because I have inputted the required field, which is the text. The caption is not a required field, but we can simply write a caption like a message. Okay. And now when we run this, we'll get our little message box pop-up with the caption or title, which says message, and the text, which is I am a robot. So I'll click OK. There you have it. If you want to change the property, you can simply retype it, or you can open up the expression editor and you can retype it over here. So if you want to type, I am a human, and click OK. The property has now changed. And now when we run it, it'll come up saying, I am a human. Another useful thing, another property is this. So usually with a message box, when you run it, you'll see that the only way you can get rid of it is by clicking this OK button. Now, let's say we want it to automatically go away. You can use the automatically close after property. So I can open up this, and you can see it's a time span. Now this here is referring to seconds, that's referring to minutes, and that's referring to hours. So I can change the say to a 3. That'll make it close after 3 seconds. So I click OK. We can see now our automatically close after has a new property. If I run this, it's going to come up with our message box. says, I'm a human, 3 seconds later, it'll then automatically close and the bot will continue running. That's what that property does. Buttons here, you can change these properties to something like OK and cancel. And if we run that, you'll see now it's going to add an extra button. Before, we only had an OK button. Now we have an OK and a cancel button. It disappeared because we still had this automatically close after set. If we don't want it to close, we can keep it to the default as 0. This topmost, this will set a Boolean true or false. And what this does, it'll always make sure the message box pops up to the front of all other applications if you have topmost set to true, which is quite useful. When you are using a message box, you do want it to show in the front. So usually setting it to topmost to true is a good idea. If I click these little 3 lines, you'll see in the expression editor, the topmost property is of variable type Boolean. So Boolean is a yes, no, or a true, false. So that is why it requires a true as input. If I input a string here, for example, if I write true as a string, it's going to give me an error because it needs to be written without the quotation marks, because this is a .NET expression, which is true. As you can see, it's highlighted in blue. So there's another Boolean property you can check here. You don't need to worry too much about this private property. If it's a very secure activity you're dealing with and you don't want it to log too much information, you can set it to true. Then when you're using Orchestrator, it won't log trace activities at the verbose level. You don't really need to worry about this too much, but you will see it in quite a lot of activities that you use. So I just wanted to make you aware of it. It's nothing too important. Last but not least, you can change the name of your properties by double clicking over here, and you can say display text, for example. If you want to change it to that, you can also change the name of that property over here, whatever you want, message box, and it'll then update just like that. It's always a good practice to rename your activities to be as descriptive as possible for what that specific activity is doing. So that's the way you can change the activity names, and you do it through your properties panel or by double clicking and typing directly into it over there. That is all for the properties panel. In the next lecture, we are going to be learning about the outline panel.